Are you struggling to feel connected in your prayer life? Have you ever felt like your prayers just bounce off the ceiling? Or maybe you wonder if there's more to prayer than reciting the same words over and over. Today, we're diving deep into the transformative power of prayer, how to make it personal, impactful, and truly life-changing. Many of us have grown up hearing about the importance of prayer. It's often seen as a simple act, a routine, or even a ritual. But what if I told you that prayer can be much more than that? In this video, we'll explore how to elevate your prayer life from a mundane habit into a vibrant conversation with God. We'll look at common mistakes people make, powerful biblical examples, and practical steps you can take to deepen your connection with the divine. You might just discover a new way to experience the presence of God in your everyday life. One of the biggest challenges in prayer is sincerity. Have you ever found yourself going through the motions? You might say the words, but your heart isn't really in it. Many people struggle with feeling like their prayers are empty repetitions or just another item on a checklist rather than heartfelt conversations. And this disconnect can lead to frustration and a sense of spiritual dryness. Picture this: praying for something incredibly important like a job, a relationship, or health for a loved one. You go to God with your request, but instead of pouring your heart out, you find yourself mumbling the same phrases you've always used. It feels mechanical, right? This isn't just a personal struggle, it's common. Even in the Bible, we see examples of prayers that lacked sincerity, leading to ineffective communication with God. This is a real problem many face, and it can leave you feeling disconnected from your faith. To tackle this challenge, let's take a closer look at what Jesus taught about prayer. In Matthew 6-7, he warns against two main pitfalls: hypocrisy and vain repetition. Let's first talk about hypocrisy. Think about the Pharisees during Jesus' time. They were known for their outward displays of piety. When they prayed, they often did so publicly, drawing attention to themselves. This is exactly what Jesus warned against. Instead of seeking a genuine relationship with God, they were more concerned about how they appeared to others. Imagine a scene where a Pharisee stands in the synagogue, raising his voice, using flowery language, and making sure everyone hears him. Instead of a conversation with God, it's more like a performance. This type of prayer misses the mark entirely. Now, in contrast, consider the story of Hannah from the Old Testament. In Samuel 1, she was deeply distressed over her inability to have children. When she prayed, she poured out her soul before God in a private setting, making a vow to dedicate her child to the Lord if her prayer was answered. Her sincerity and vulnerability led to God granting her request. Hannah's story illustrates the importance of being honest and open in our prayers. When we approach God with our true feelings and struggles, we invite Him into our lives in a profound way. Next, let's address the issue of vain repetition. Have you ever felt like you were just saying the same things over and over without really thinking about them? This is where many of us get stuck. Jesus said, "When you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words." This highlights the importance of meaningful communication. Let's consider the Lord's Prayer as an example. It's a powerful model Jesus provided, but it can easily become a rote recitation. Instead of treating it as a formula to repeat, we should use it as a guide. Each line offers a focus for our prayers, helping us align our hearts with God's will. When we say, "Your kingdom come," we're not just repeating words, we're inviting God's reign into our lives and the world around us. Reflecting on what that means for our relationships, our communities, and our personal struggles can enrich our prayer life tremendously. For instance, let's say you're praying for a friend who's struggling with depression. Instead of just saying, "God help my friend," you could expand on that. You might pray for specific things. "Lord, please give my friend strength today. Help them to feel your love and support. Show me how I can be a better friend to them." This specificity can transform your prayer into something much more meaningful. Another challenge we face is approaching prayer with doubt. James 16:17 tells us that when we ask God for something, we should believe and not doubt. Prayer without faith is like sending a letter and not expecting a reply. If you don't believe God can or will respond, it diminishes the power of your prayer. Let's look at the story of Hezekiah in Kings 19. He faced a massive threat from the Assyrian army, and instead of panicking, he turned to God in prayer. He laid out the threatening letter from Sennacherib before the Lord, demonstrating his confidence in God's power. His faith led to a miraculous intervention that saved Jerusalem. Imagine the scene, Hezekiah kneeling in the temple, tears in his eyes, laying that letter before God. He knew that the odds were stacked against him, but he also knew that God was bigger than any challenge he faced. That's the kind of faith we should strive for in our prayers. Now let's talk about the key moment in prayer, the point where everything can change. When we shift our focus from simply asking for things to truly connecting with God, that's when powerful transformation happens. Think about your own life. When was the last time you prayed with such intensity that you felt God's presence? Maybe it was during a crisis or a moment of deep gratitude. Those prayers often stand out because they are grounded in genuine emotion and faith. Consider the story of Elijah on Mount Carmel in Kings 18. Elijah prayed fervently for God to reveal his power to the people of Israel, who were caught up in idol worship. His prayer was direct and bold, and God answered by sending fire from heaven. This wasn't a formulaic prayer, it was a heartfelt plea for God's glory to be displayed. Imagine the scene, the altar drenched in water, the people watching in awe as Elijah called on God. The fire consumed not just the sacrifice, but also the wood, stones, and even the dust. Elijah's story teaches us that prayer can be a powerful declaration of faith, a moment when God's power is revealed in extraordinary ways. So how can you enhance your prayer life? Here are 6 practical steps. First, create a prayer space. Find a quiet place where you can focus. It doesn't have to be fancy, just somewhere you feel comfortable and can spend uninterrupted time with God. Second, use a prayer journal. Write down your prayers, thoughts, and reflections. This can help you articulate your feelings and keep track of how God answers your prayers over time. Third, be specific. When you pray, be as specific as possible. Instead of saying, "God, help my family," try something like, "Lord, please help my sister find peace during this difficult time." Specificity helps you engage more deeply. Fourth, incorporate scripture. Use verses from the Bible to guide your prayers. For example, if you're praying for guidance, you might reference James 1, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God." Fifth, practice silence. Sometimes the best prayers are the ones where we listen. Spend time in silence, allowing God to speak to your heart. And number 6, pray with others. Find a prayer partner or group. Sharing your prayers with others can bring accountability and support, and you can uplift each other in faith. As we wrap up, remember that prayer is not just about asking for things. It's about building a relationship with God. Avoid hypocrisy and vain repetition by being sincere and engaged in your conversations with Him. Use models like the Lord's Prayer as guides, but let your prayers be filled with your own words and emotions. Approach God with faith, believing He hears and responds to your cries. God desires a genuine connection with us, and when we put in the effort to cultivate that relationship, we open the door to powerful transformation in our lives. If you want to learn more about enhancing your prayer life, check out our next video.